Good morning. If we could ask all our guests to take their seats, we'd like to get our program underway. I know looking out in the parking lot, as I just was a few minutes ago, there's some folks still coming in, but I also know that many of you have taken time from your other duties to come here this morning, so we want to try to keep our program as punctual as possible. First of all, I'm delighted to have this opportunity to be here in Worcester, and I want to thank the Worcester officials for the welcome that they've given us in this magnificent hall. We felt that Worcester was the right place in terms of its centrality to come to try to have as many people from around the state come together and to kick off what we regard as one of the most important exercises that government, I say government generally, both state and federal, does. And that's especially true for us here in Massachusetts. Let me say at the outset, I'm particularly grateful to the many local officials who have come this morning and who we have been working with as we prepare for the census of 2010. 10 years ago, I had the privilege of coordinating the effort with the federal agency involved. At that time, the regional director was Arthur Dukakis. And we had, as we have now, the challenge that we are in a part of the country that is generally regarded as having flat population growth. And so it's always a challenge, and the first thing people think about is, well, our congressional representation, and that's certainly very important. But it's also our communities. The reality is, and I think that point has been brought home to us in a very specific way, that the assistance we get from the federal government is extremely important. And much of that assistance comes from programs that are per capita based, that are based upon the populations of our communities. We also know, and I know the local officials here are particularly aware of this, that the numbers that we will generate from this census will not only determine our political representation in Congress, it will determine our political representation at the State House and the legislature. It will require local officials to recut their local election district lines, their precinct lines, their ward lines. It goes right down to the town meeting level, which will decide how the communities govern themselves and how, in fact, they are being represented. When it comes to dollars, there's no question that the dollars, as I said, that have come from the federal government are particularly important to any number of programs that we have around in our governments and around our state. So this is a very important exercise. This is not simply a sterile, statistical, bureaucratic exercise. I know you know that, and our message is to try to get that out to, our effort rather, is to try to get that message out to all of our citizens throughout Massachusetts as we prepare for the big count next year. This morning, I'm delighted to welcome and present to you the Regional Director of the Department of Commerce, Kathy Ludgate. She has the responsibility of coordinating the census for the Department of Commerce in the Northeast, in this particular region, which is broader than Massachusetts. She has areas of upstate New York as well as other states in New England. We worked very closely with the Department of Commerce 10 years ago. The good news is that Kathy brings to this effort a tremendous amount of energy and interest. We've been working closely with her over the last year to improve the quality of the lists that we have, that is, the addresses that we have in our database. We've been able to work through the LUCA program with the federal agencies to try to improve the quality of the mailing we're going to do, as well as to identify new populations and group quarters in particular. On the state side, the Donahue Institute has been working very closely with my office to digest the statistics, to show us where the statistics are. And I can already report some good news. As a result of some of the statistical challenges that we made to some of the estimates that have come out over the last few years, we've already adjusted upwards our population by over 30,000. So as we prepare to go into this census, the federal estimate we now start with is almost 6.5 million people, which when you consider that in 2000 we started with a federal estimate of 6.1 and ended up beating that federal estimate by 300,000 people, I think it says a lot about our state and how it's growing despite the fact that it is in a northeast region that seems flat. So we have many things to talk about this morning. I will be happy to engage you in questions. I want to say, before I introduce Kathy, that the purpose of this is not simply to tell you things, it's to ask you not only for your help but for your information. I personally believe that no one knows more about our communities than local officials. They're the folks that live there, they deal with the problems, but they also deal with the changes that have come to communities. They know exactly what's going on in their town, their city. They know exactly what types of populations are coming in, and they know best how to reach those populations. So our hope today is not simply to inform you about what the federal government is planning to do, but also to glean from you information as to how we can together make this a success as we approach the census. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce to you the Regional Director of the Department of Commerce, Kathy Ludgate.